Good morning, everybody. I'll just start the session. So we have all come here to learn something about uh, the clinical evidence of this new therapy which has come in the management of neovascular ARMD, RCT to real-world evidence. And I'm joined with a huge galaxy of renowned panelists, starting from Prashant Bhavanpule, Ramesh Venkatesh, Nishikant Borse, Durani, and Debulal, Dr. Indu, Srinivas, Manoj, and Milan. So our basic aim will be to become wiser after this session. That how do we become wiser in the management of new ARMD? So I'll just initiate this session and then ask Nishikant to take over. So although I'll be chairing, but I think all of us can manage this session equally well. So various trials, various molecules, and various regimens have been tried, but still there are unmet needs. Which fluid is tolerable? There are fluid theories. What is the endpoint? And what are the real world experiences?
जी दवा दवा रिपीट करो दवा रिपीट करो
Hello, can you?
साइमा दवा रिपीट करो
Hello. So a lot of talk has been on the fluid compartments in ARMD. To my thinking, all fluid is bad. Only it is our defeat that we can't, eradicate fluid. Then we say, okay, it is acceptable SRF, and people say SRF may be good for the health of the retina or vision. But you see, we all try our best to do this. And here is the new kid on the block, and we will be discussing something about this. So with this, will stop sharing and welcome Prashant. We're waiting for you. So we'll request Nishikant Borse, prolific VR surgeon from Mumbai, has done a lot of pioneering work in the field of vitreoretina. Specifically, he has gained a lot of name after doing surgery for central retinal artery occlusion, which we were remembering yesterday. So Nishikant, we'll request you to start this session with this topic: clinical evidence of brolucimab. What is the evidence? Why are we forced to consider this molecule also? Nishikant. Nishikant, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Good morning, and thanks a lot for that lovely introduction, and thanks to Novartis for arranging this session on this newest kid on block, the brolucizumab. Now, as we know, this is a sponsored session, so that was my disclaimer. And as we know that neovascular AMD treatment strategies usually fail, and they usually fail after the second year because of the decline by the visits by the patients and also the reduced number of injections. So, but what if we get a same result with reduced number of injections and also with a good number of reduction in injections and visits by the patient? And that will be a perfect thing because whenever you look at the unmet needs that we have, and we ask many people, even the physicians, most of them believe that if we reduce the burden on the patients and the number of injections, but by maintaining the same amount of effectivity, it is going to be a game changer. So basically, we have been trying to have a lot of flexible regimens like treat and extend, etc., to come in basically to reduce the burden on healthcare resources. But many a times, these regimens have also failed because there is a delay in detection of the recurrences and leads to suboptimal therapy. Now, the ongoing challenge, therefore, was to maintaining the efficacy of treatment, but reducing the clinical visits and injections. And the answer for that might be in form of this single chain antibody fragment called brolucizumab that has been developed. Now, what is so beautiful about the brolucizumab is that it has got a very, very small molecular size, about 26 kilodaltons, which increases its penetrability, and it's also got on top of it a longer duration of action. So it gives you both more punch power and a longer duration of action also. Now, this particular molecule has not been rushed through, but it has gone through a series of trials which are seen in every molecule that we have got till now. It has gone through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 uh, clinical trials. And today we'll be discussing about the phase 3 clinical trials, that is the Hawk and the Harrier trial. Now, the Hawk and the Harrier trials were the phase 3 multi-center randomized double-masked clinical trials, which are parallel trials, as we know, just like View 1 and View 2, and the RIDE and RISE, which are parallel trials that are needed for any molecule to be approved by the US FDA and the European Union. So the Hawk trial was held in the United States, and the Harrier trial was held globally, excluding the United States. Both were parallel trials. The only difference was, other than the site, the Hawk also compared brolucizumab 3 milligram, 6 milligram to aflibercept, whereas the Harrier trial only had two arms, the 6 milligram of brolucizumab and aflibercept. Both these trials together had about 408 study trials. Now, what was the aim of this particular trial was to know whether it is not inferior to aflibercept in mean change of BCVA or maintaining the visual acuity or having a better visual acuity or not. The secondary endpoint were to see how much of visual acuity could be improved, how did the fluid vanish by using this molecule, and whether we can have the disease activity controlled properly by week 16. And the more important thing was to have the proportion of patients whom we could have maintained on Q12 interval, that is nearly a 3-monthly interval, which we know would reduce the burden on the patients, and to predict how much percent of the patients will go on Q12. Now, this was basically the study design. There were initially 3 loading doses, and at 16 week, the disease activity assessment was done. Now, if you found that the disease activity was well controlled, then the patients on brolucizumab arm were shifted either to Q12 or Q8, depending upon the disease activity assessment. And the aflibercept arm patients continued on 8-weekly injections. Now, the disease activity assessment was meant to know whether we can continue the patients on 8-weekly in the brolucizumab arm, or we can shift the patient to a Q12 dosing in the brolucizumab arm. Now, what actually was assessed is whether the disease is active. And how do you know the disease is active? If there is a decrease in the BCVA, or there is a neovascular AMD activity which was seen at DZ16 in form of either the central foveal thickness increase, or you find newer fluid, or anything that suggests a disease activity. However, after that, every four weekly, the disease was assessed. And at that time, the assessment was purely made on basis of BCVA due to neovascular AMD disease, whether the BCVA is decreased. Now, the point to note was a patient who was shifted from 12 weekly injection to 8 weekly injection because of a disease activity was never shifted back to 12 weekly once the disease is inactivated, but was continued with 8 weekly treatment till the end of the study. So we had a significant chunk of patients who went from 12 to 8, but then they were not put back to 12 like we would do in real life, but they were maintained on 8 weekly dosing. And that's what we need to maintain in our mind when we look at the statistics. So what did we come to know about the non-inferiority in terms of visual acuity maintenance or gain? Well, it is comparable. Both were about 6 letters improvement in aflibercept as well as brolucizumab arm. And therefore, the first primary endpoint was met, that the brolucizumab was not inferior to aflibercept in terms of visual acuity improvement. Now, how many proportion of patients who gained more than 15 letters from baseline or best corrected visual acuity of more than 84 letters at week 8? Again, you will see that here both the arms are nearly comparable. In fact, the Hawk trial showed a slightly superior visual acuity gain as compared to aflibercept in this particular arm. But where did the difference really come in? The difference came in looking at the central macular thickness or the fluid. Like if you see here, the brolucizumab arm had a very nicely maintained diminished in the central macular thickness, whereas there is a seesaw pattern that can be seen in aflibercept with the activity reducing after the injection and again going up before the injection. So the seesaw pattern was not there in the brolucizumab arm, as compared to aflibercept arm. Now, is this important in real life? It is, because when you take a particular cohort which had got a maximum fluctuation in central macular thickness, it was found that the visual acuity gain was not as good as compared to the patients who didn't have a fluctuation in the central foveal thickness. Even when you saw these quartiles, which had a lesser fluctuation to a more fluctuation, you will see that the quartile which has maximum fluctuation had the least amount of visual acuity improvement, and the quartile with the least fluctuation had the maximum one. So when you read the whole cohort, it's a different game. But when you break up the cohort into different quartiles, you will find that the fluid fluctuation does make a difference in visual acuity improvement. Now, what about the drying effect? It was seen that aflibercept did dry, but brolucizumab was much superior to that in drying. The brolucizumab showed much more drying in intraretinal and subretinal fluids at week 16, 48, and 96 as compared to aflibercept. When you see the subset of it, you will find that if you just look at subretinal fluid also, the brolucizumab arm had a fantastic drying effect as compared to aflibercept. If you see the number of patients on brolucizumab who had patients in sub-RP group also, you will find that even in sub-RP group, the brolucizumab arm did much better than aflibercept arm. Now, did this same effect was seen in real world scenario by us? Well, it did. There's a 67-year-old male who came to me with a large subfoveal CNVM and had fluid in every compartment and along with some like SREM material too. And just after 3 days of injection of brolucizumab, you can see that all 3 compartments are totally dry. And in fact, even the SREM has started reducing. So the same effect that was mentioned in the Hawk and Harrier trials, we can actually even see in real world scenarios. Now, in another case, this was a 79-year-old male who was maintained on treat and extend. And this was the initial pictures of this patient. But as the treatment went on, I could see that there's always a pocket of subretinal fluid. Now, as per the fluid study, I said, okay, let's tolerate this fluid, and his treatment extension continued till the time I got brolucizumab in October, and I decided to replace the anti-VEGF agent with brolucizumab, and lo and behold, what happened is this same stubborn subretinal fluid vanished after injection brolucizumab. So it just shows that there is a superior drying effect of brolucizumab as compared to the other anti-VEGF agents that we have. Now, what about the number of patients whom we could take on Q12 dosing? Well, you can see that roughly about 50% of the patients of brolucizumab 6 milligram could be maintained on 3 monthly dosing at week 48. Now, nearly 80% of these patients, means about 40% of the total patients, if you take as a cohort, could be maintained on Q12, remained up to the Q12 interval for a longer period of time, even after they have maintained a Q12 interval up to week 48. So we can see that we can reduce the burden quite a bit when the number of injections become less. And furthermore, if you see that right up to week 96, we can see that about roughly 40% of the patients who are put on brolucizumab could maintain themselves on Q12 interval. So that is a big boost for us as far as we can go in treatment of wet AMD by merely reduction of number of injections, plus we have a better drying effect and a more potent agent. Now look at this female patient who was with me, who had a very small CNVM, which was seen on Octa. And after giving brolucizumab, within a week, you can see the fluid is reduction. And this is the CNVM that can be seen clearly now. And I gave her the second injection, and she has maintained fluid free now for 16 weeks. So the point of showing this real clinical scenarios is that whatever is seen in the studies is not merely restricted to studies, but we can even replicate it in day-to-day life. So in the end, we can conclude that Hawk and Harrier showed that we can have good visual outcomes, good anatomical outcomes, and a Q12 interval injection with the brolucizumab arm, and we can actually stretch it to even 16 weeks if we try with the treat and extend or other regimen with them. Now, what about the real world evidence from the other countries? We can see that in the BRU study, which had a limited number of patients with only 4 centers, there are 42 patients. And these patients had 29 eyes who had single injection and 9 eyes who had 2 injections. And this study showed that at 7.2 weeks, the mean follow-up duration was there after brolucizumab. So you can imagine that the patients came once in 2 months, literally, and all eyes were treated more than. Hello.
Please continue. Please continue. Hold on, please. Timer. Yeah, you continue.
Yeah, sir, I'm just winding up. Yeah. Okay. And what did this study show? That there was a significant reduction in the central macular thickness. All the 3 fluid compartments showed a fantastic drying effect, and the BCVA also had a good amount of improvement. This is just an indicative case or a representative case from that study, which showed that the subretinal fluid, which did not respond, like my case, which I showed earlier, responded well with brolucizumab. Surprisingly, be good enough, we could see no inflammations in this particular sites. And I'm very glad that even in Indian eyes, we are yet to see any severe reported cases of occlusive vasculitis that has come in even after nearly 9 months of usage. Finally, just coming to the intraocular inflammations that we are so scared of, I think we should basically rule out any previous intraocular inflammation, and we can use whatever augmented multimodal imaging we have to rule it out. And we should report whatever inflammations that we get, and we can actually counsel the patients for any symptoms so that we can treat them easily and early with steroids so that it does not become more fulminant inflammations. So in summary, we know that anti-VEGF therapies are revolutionizing the outcomes, but there are still unmet medical needs. And I just hope that in the future to come, brolucizumab will meet these unmet needs and help us take the goals of achieving better visual acuity in our wet AMD patients further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nishikant, for laying solid foundation for this starting of this webinar. In fact, you have covered all the essence, whatever anybody wanted to hear. So before we go on to the real world evidence, let me ask you how confident today you are to inject brolucizumab.
Yeah, so brolucizumab has now climbed the steps of hierarchy as far anti-VEGFs go. Now it is one of the main agent that I would be suggesting to my patients when they come with neovascular AMD.
Let me very blunt. How many proportion of neovascular AMD do you treat with brolucizumab? What percentage?
So I would say about 60% now. It was 20% initially. Now it has gone to about 60%.
So that's a very huge figure. Actually, this shows the confidence actually which you have on this drug. So, after hearing all this data from Hawk Harrier and also from BRU study, and also some personal experiences which Nishikant has shown, because a lot of people are afraid today. Honestly, in a lot of centers which, a lot of retina work is done, people are afraid to shift to brolucizumab, and that's the whole purpose of allaying this fear, that how many people are, doing this drug. And what I could gather was more than nearly 3,500 or 4,000 injections have already been given in our country. And whenever I speak to anybody, I have yet to come across a patient, maybe I'll become wiser after this webinar, whether they do experience any inflammation or whatever experience I have. Honestly speaking, I have not seen any single patient who has had inflammation or who has had vasculitis after even this Merlin study, which has come up recently, which Novartis has stopped some this thing. But there was issues with that because Merlin was different protocol than Hawk and Harrier and whatever we do in real world scenario. So let's hear the king of injections, that is Ajay Dudhani from Mumbai. I called him king because the entire Mumbai population, I think, is dependent on Ajay Dudhani for injections. Yes, Ajay.
So very, very true, sir.
I know Nishikant is hearing, but still I call him king because because he does a lot of injections. Yes, king.
Yeah, we call him Dada, sir. He is the boss.
So where has he vanished? Dudani, we are waiting. Ajay Dudani is stuck somewhere. So, can we hear then Dr. Debulal?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Prashant? Yeah, Debulal is there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll share my slides,
Yeah,
sir.
please,
And
please.
can you see my slides, sir?
Yeah, it is just coming up. Yeah.
Can you
Now,
see
we can see now.
my
Yes, we can see the first slide.
So, very good morning to all of you, and my regards to seniors. So, we'll be speaking on brolucizumab from clinical trials to real world. We've already heard Dr. Nishikant so elaborately explain about the Hawk and Harrier and the real world scenario. So, what's so special about brolucizumab? Well, it is the first single chain fragment antibody, one of its kind, to have been ever used on the human body. And this small molecular size actually enables deeper penetration, allowing faster onset of action and greater molar dosing, causing longer duration of action. So this is what we are going to check on. And we are also going to check on what actually the deep learning based OCT analysis told us from Hawk and Harrier, which was also nicely explained by Dr. Nishikant, that there is extensive decrease in intraretinal fluid following the first dose. Then it goes on to say superior SRF resolution with brolucizumab and no sawtoothing with brolucizumab as opposed to sawtoothing of SRF with aflibercept, and also more pronounced PED resolution with brolucizumab. It also goes on to say that brolucizumab treatment resulted in more stable inactive lesions in the subretinal space where the CNV localizes. So these are things that we are going to check on. So let's share our experience at Disha. We've actually injected more than 250 injections now, but this is a total of 60 eyes that we are showing today. Consecutive observational case series. A minimum follow-up of 4 weeks was necessary for inclusion in this, and range of 4 to 7 weeks. So 16 were naive and 44 were switches from other anti-VEGF injections. So if you look at the change in mean visual acuity, the switch group had improved from 660 to 624 and the naive group from 624 to 612. Both situations statistically significant improvement of vision. If you look at the central macular thickness, from 371 in the switch group, it came down to 283. And in the naive group, from 514, it came down to 301. So both situations, again, statistically significant improvement. And if you look at the whole cohort, the mean change in visual acuity as also the mean change in central macular thickness was statistically significant. Now let's go for a few cases. So this is a 70-year-old AMD patient with 11 anti-VEGF injections already received. So this is the baseline pre-brolucizumab. So you can see a lot of SRF here, the DLS is there, and this is the OCTA showing activity. So this is what happened just after 1 week of brolucizumab injection. The SRF is going down. This is what happens in a month's time with SRF almost not there, little bit of IRF here. Next, at 9 weeks, you can see the macula looks really good, and there's just a trace of SRF here in the extrafoveal region, and this is at 16 weeks. So now the intraretinal fluid is coming back. So you have evidence of actually greater molar dosing causing longer duration of action here. So this is after the second injection, which he received at 4 months, and immediately 1 week following the injection, the macula looks neat and dry. So let's move on to the next case. 72-year-old male, status post 20 anti-VEGFs of all kinds, and this is where he was picked up for brolucizumab. You can see a large, SREM here and SRF here. So this is 1 month post brolucizumab. Vision improved by a line to 624, but more importantly, no fluid here. Now let's look at what happened, subsequently. This, of course, shows decrease in intraretinal fluid following the first dose, as has been told by the deep learning-based analysis of Hawk and Harrier. 2 months, still no fluid. 3 months, still no fluid. So you have evidence of a more stable inactive lesion in the subretinal space where the CNV localizes, as has been mentioned by Hawk and Harrier. So again, you have evidence of longer duration of action because of greater molar dosing possible with brolucizumab. Next patient. This patient actually had received 21 anti-VEGF injections, and these are his OCTs at various points in time. And this is where he was picked up for brolucizumab. There's a SREM here, large PED, and a SRF. So 1 week post brolucizumab, the fluid is all gone. There's a small subretinal cleft here, but the fluid, intraretinal and subretinal fluid, and also the PED is flattened out. So you have deeper penetration, giving rise to further faster onset of action that is evident here. What happened, subsequently was this, that at 13 weeks, the SRFs just began to come back, and the intraretinal fluid was also coming back. So this is evidence of, a longer duration of action that is possible because of the greater molar dosing. Next up, after the second injection, first week after the second injection, the fluid is all gone, and you have evidence of, faster onset of action again. So next patient, a naive patient, large serous PED with SRF. At the end of 1 month, you can see the PED going down, and there's a slight improvement in vision of 1 Snellen's line. So you have more pronounced PED resolution with brolucizumab, as has been espoused by the studies. Now let's look at this unique patient. Came in May 20 with this serous PED and SRF, and he was advised aflibercept at that point in time. Started doing better, but he came back 9 weeks later with this huge serous PED and a notched kind of a PED here and SRF also. So we offered him brolucizumab, and actually he became better. And there's almost no fluid, vision also improved. So you have evidence of more pronounced PED resolution and also faster action here. This 64-year-old with a large SREM. After brolucizumab, in 1 week, the SRAM is kind of thinning out, and at 6 weeks, there's almost no SRAM here. Vision has improved from 636 to 612. And look at this, at 11 weeks, there's this slight speck of him that's coming back, and so we thought this CNVM was coming back, and we injected the next dose at the 11 weeks. And this is 1 week post the second brolucizumab, 6 part vision. So really good improvements. You have evidence of more stable inactive lesion and the subretinal space where the CNV localizes. Let's look at this patient. Large subretinal bleed, and this is the autofluorescence, Optos autofluorescence, and this is a 70-year-old lady, 160 vision. So we offered her brolucizumab with recombinant TPA and C3A8. And look what happened at 2 weeks time. The hemorrhage is going down, and the structural lucidity looks a lot better. And this is at 2 months post the first dose only, 624 vision, still no fluid. And she actually received an injection last week. Let's look at this patient, the last case, 72-year-old gentleman who actually had many injections. And initially I thought, okay, this is a case of a polyp, and so we did an ICG and we offered him PDT with ranibizumab, and he started doing little better. But then subsequently he went on to have 44 anti-VEGF injections, including 1 PDT, of course. So this is where he was picked up for brolucizumab with this fluid SRF there, still there. And as you can see, post first brolucizumab, the SRF going down. This is post second brolucizumab. Remember, this is at 3 months interval. Patient wouldn't agree to take, the brolucizumab earlier. So at 3 months, the fluid was going down and it was doing better. Second injection, still little fluid at 3 months, and he's taken the third injection, and there's slight improvement in vision also. So you have pronounced SRF resolution that is noted. So we have used in across indications, and we have had no inflammation so far in DISHA. To conclude, brolucizumab appears to be effective in all forms of neovascular AMD, and you have longer disease-free intervals. And I'd like to thank you all for your kind attention.
Showing this wonderful series, and I think you have been lucky to have excellent results also in most of these patients. Yeah, can you stop sharing here? So as far as yeah, Dudani, can you stop sharing, Dudani? We'll have some discussion and then come back to you.
Sorry.
You disappeared to give some injection actually.
No.
So can you stop sharing?
Yeah.
So we did call you, Dudani, but somehow missed it. So the Babulal, out of your experience, like you said, you have experience of more than 250 eyes. Do you follow that regimen, strict regimen as a Hawken Harrier? That is, you give loading dose and then shift to Q12, or you do a PRN kind of stuff from beginning?
Sir, it's absolutely, but we're very strict for primarily because one is the inflammation, if there is an inflammation, and secondly,
your voice is breaking up.
Yeah, network is.
Prashant, his voice is breaking up actually.
Yeah, exactly. I can't hear him.
Either you put off the video so that we can hear you.
Dr. Deb, you're supposed to put off your video so we can get your voice at least.
Yeah, Devulal, don't go away at least. So let's ask Nishikant otherwise. Nishikant, what is your belief that?
Yes, sir. Is it
Devulal?
audible, sir?
Yeah,
Yeah.
now audible. What are you
Yeah.
asking?
So actually, sir, we follow a strict regimen of, actually, sir, we give the injection, follow up the patient within a week, and then every 4 weeks thereafter. So that's the protocol we strictly follow in Disha. And we see whether there is any increase in the OCT characteristics which necessitates a second injection. And we don't go in for the Hawk and Harrier kind of injection every month.
So
And
that's what I'm asking. It is seeing is different than injecting. So that means you do not give a loading dose.
no, sir, not even in naive cases.
Yeah, that was the second question. Is your experience different from in naive patients vis-a-vis non-naive patients? Have you compared?
Yes, sir. We have compared. All of them have improved. In fact, the naive patients are doing better because maybe because these are patients who come early and they have a kind of a better visual acuity. So in naive patients, the results have been better. But in recalcitrant patients, the visual acuity results have improved somewhat. But the fluid compartment has absolutely dried up in almost all cases.
So that was my apprehension also, because if you take patients who have already have 30-40 injections and then you give brolucizumab, the anatomical results may come, but the visual results may get compromised because of these multiple injections.
Absolutely, sir.
Prashant, what is your take on that?
Yeah, definitely, sir. The potency about the molecule, the superiority of the molecule in fluid drying is unbeaten, unmatched, that every one of us accepts. Naturally, if we drain of or dry off the macula in a tissue which is not harmed by prolonged period of pathological process being staying there, that is what I mean. In a naive case, it is going to have a better physiological outcome, and that is my experience too.
Okay, I think for short of time, Indu, if you permit, Srinivas has to go for another webinar. We will request Srinivas to present his few slides and then request him to present and then come back, please, Srinivas. Otherwise, you will be penalized.
No, sir, I'll always be there. Thank you so much, Lalit, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Novartis, and nice to see all my senior colleagues here. So I'll start my screen share. Acha, that was a WebCon event. I was surprised where did the audio come from. Oh. So I hope my screen is visible. Thank you so much. We can set the timer. So this is the disclaimer. I have no financial interest disclosures in this presentation. So we all know that according to this study, more than 5.1 injections are actually required to maintain the baseline, and more than 7.9 injections are actually required to improve the vision from the baseline to more than 15 letters, according to the study done by Halls. So if we see the ranibizumab, it is 0.66 letter gain per ranibizumab injection. So how many injections we need to get into to reach from 0.66 letter to 15? So that is why there is a need for long-term injection. That is the injection of longer durability. So here we have various injections. We all know about aflibercept, ranibizumab, bevacizumab, brolucizumab. So what makes brolucizumab interesting is about this molarity. It has relative number of injections, molecules per injection is 11.2, 13.3 as compared to the aflibercept, which is 1.0. So theoretically, it makes brolucizumab more potent. So come to the case. This is a 27-year-old woman presented to us on August 2020 with blurring of vision in the left eye. She received multiple anti-VEGF injections elsewhere, and her vision was 660 and 18 on the day of presentation. So this is the OCT of the left eye. We can see there is subretinal fluid, there is a PED, there is a pachychoroid also in this, and if you see the OCTA, there is a neovascular network in this case. So the diagnosis of left eye pachychoroid neovasculopathy was done. Intravitreal ranibizumab was given in the first instance, but 1 month, 4 days, there was in fact increase in the intraretinal fluid, leave alone the settling of the subretinal fluid. So we switched to aflibercept. You can see there is a good response to aflibercept 1 month, 15 days post injections. but there was recurrence on this, and then 2 months post aflibercept, there was recurrence. And she was advised repeat aflibercept injection, but because of the financial issues, she used brolucizumab, and brolucizumab was given. And even after 2 months, there was still maintaining good vision and anatomically also doing better. So this is a 71-year-old man who presented to us with blurring of vision, diagnosed with right eye CNVM, and the second opinion was taken. He had come here for second opinion. And here you can see these are the polyps, actually very nicely picked up by the OCT. And here you can also see the OCT network, that is the avascular area. FFA ICG definitely showed the polyps, and this is the FFA corresponding to this polyp. And this is the another polyp which is getting corresponded here. So started on aflibercept 3 monthly doses, PRN followed multiple doses. You can see here from 2017, she is on multiple injections. So these are the few glimpses of various injections she received per year. And the OCTA, when we did it, it appeared to be a dead tree appearance on type 1 CNVM on OCTA. And but unfortunately, she stopped responding to aflibercept. And here you can see here, there was no much response at all 2 months post aflibercept. That is when we switched from brolucizumab, and we can still see this is just 1 month 14 days, but she had come very recently. It was almost around 2.5 months, and she was doing pretty good. So and another interesting thing what I find here is the FIPED, the height of the FIPED has also decreased. So when we are doing a comparative analysis of the height of the RP, the FIPED in these cases as compared to aflibercept, we see that there is a stronger resolution of the sub-RP fluid as compared to the aflibercept. Of course, head-on trial is needed to justify any of the statements which I said. So 3.5 months, again, she developed recurrence. So according to us, she tolerated this injection roughly around 3 months to 3 months and 1 week. And again, after 3 months, we gave a repeat brolucizumab, and the follow-up is awaited. This is another case where you can see the stall peak PED with a notched PED here. And this was again a case of PCV, corresponding point of sign of polyp on octa here, you can see here. And FA and ICG was done. It also showed a polyp. She was advised aflibercept before, but because of financial reasons, she opted for brolucizumab. There's another good thing about brolucizumab is they have come out with a cost-effective rate as compared to the aflibercept. And this you can see 1 month post-injection, she is really doing well. So another case, this is the interesting case because she had multiple injections right from 2014. And here you can see the multi-layered PED with type 1 CNVM. You can see the octa also showing a neovascular network. And she received brolucizumab. So she was a very curious writer and a reader. She is only with one eye, other eye is totally scarred. So when I injected brolucizumab in her, she was one of the few patients who told me that the visual acuity improvement was pretty early as compared to the earlier injection. I don't know whether it was psychologically she was saying because I said her it's a new injection, but she was pretty much sure that she had early visual recovery as compared to aflibercept, which usually used to take 2 weeks or 3 weeks in time. But anatomically also she developed pretty well, and visually she was definitely very happy. Again, in this patient, you can see it tolerated to nearly around 3 months in this case. And again, when the recurrence started, we gave her repeat injection after 3 months. So this is again after 3 months, the follow-up is awaited. This is just before the 3-month injection. So another case here, you can see there is a case of the left eye, the right eye showed PEDs with the SRF, and we did FFA and ICG in this case. And again, it showed the branching neovascular network here. You can see here, this was the case of BVN recorded on ICGA, and corresponding site of sub-RP network and the FIPED on OCT and OCTA was shown here. This is the another picture where you can see and she received multiple mixture of ranibizumab, bevacizumab, brolucizumab. But after brolucizumab, because this is on the day, and she had a very good recovery because she had stopped responding to ranibizumab. And this complete resolution, now you can see 2 months and she was still holding. So this is another last two of my cases, right eye OCT. This is the left eye OCT that showed FIPED with SHREM here with SRF and IRF. The FFA and ICG confirmed that there was a signs of polyp in the late frames. And this was corresponding the FFA to the OCT here. That is the polyp on the OCT and the FFA. This is the left eye, which also showed. And this is the case who received multiple injections of aflibercept. Again, you can see here on the day of brolucizumab, last follow-up 3 months. So this patient roughly came up to between 2 to 3 months. And this was again followed up, and we again re-injected after 3 months of follow-up. So I'll skip this last case of mine. This is another patient who was a sister of the fourth case which I shown. She underwent again multiple surgeries, and this was the injection she received. And lastly, we had to shift her. This is the retained PFO she had because of the surgery, myopic eye. And now you can see 1 month post brolucizumab, she has around 6/36 vision in this eye. 1 month post brolucizumab, she's doing good. And 2 months, again, you can see here, there was pretty much a good improvement. But post 2 months follow-up, again, she developed signs of recurrence. So this patient tolerated for nearly 2 months, but not 3 months. On we did the right eye OCTA, almost my last slide. When we did the right eye OCTA, you can see the hyalinized trunk here, along with the peripheral small caliber vessel network, which shows the signs of chronicity. And fortunately, in the right eye, also she developed CNVM, but she's doing good. 1 month post brolucizumab. She had come recently, and she's post 3 months, and she's pretty much doing well in the right eye. And her vision in the right eye is 6/18. So with this, I conclude telling that in our initial case of 40-50 cases, I have seen excellent response with brolucizumab in occult CNVM, PCV, and chronic non-resolving SRF and IRF. So the maximum duration of action noted at our institute was around 3 months. So I'd like to acknowledge our fellows, Dr. Farath and Dr. Rajeshri, for picking up these cases for me. Thank you very much for the patient listening.
Thank you, Srinivas, for showing excellent pictures of response to brolucizumab. In fact, if you want to go, you can carry on. I think if you permit, all of you permit, we'll have discussion at the end, because I think more or less similar cases are being shown. And Dudani, can you please load up your presentation, because
yes,
you had loaded up and Srinivas had
sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
thank you, Lalit sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Srinivas, try to come back if you can.
Sure, sir. I'll be there.
Let's try to restrict the number of cases. I think because Dudani, if you have 180 slides, it will be difficult. So
no, we are not. Those are not my slides. No, don't worry. Yeah, we are not showing those many.
Yeah.
So as we are aware that the visual outcomes, the disease activity, the predictability is excellent with this molecule, and we can have every 3 monthly injections in these patients. So this is one of my first cases, which I call it as a case of serendipity. He was an 80-year-old gentleman, a high myopic with a left eye CNVM, which I was treating, and the right eye was 6/6 always. So he received 1 ranibizumab and 1 brolucizumab in his left eye. So this is how his story starts in the left eye. This is the CNV here, and this is the response which we had post Paginex. And at 1 month, it's flat and dry. So he comes to me for follow-up at 2 months because he was good. We didn't inject him. I'm also not doing loading dose in these patients. So the left eye recurs, but surprisingly, the right eye, which I dilated just by chance, was showing a peripapillary CNVM, which is seen very beautifully here. Patient has absolutely no symptoms. He's 6/6. So it was an incidental finding. He was a pharmacologist doctor's father, and we definitely injected his right eye first, and we moved straight to Paginex. And this is the dramatic response at 1 week, which we had for this classic CNVM. The hemorrhage had gone and the lesion had dried up. Then we injected the left eye also, which again looked better. At 5 weeks, he was bone dry. You can see the lesion of the treatment naive eye. You can see that the lesion is almost gone. It's just partly visible. So there is no net on this high definition scan here. Maybe this light here. And that's when we gave him a second dose of his Paginex here, because there was some intraretinal fluid here, But the sad news is we lost him in the second wave of COVID, So he was doing very well, and we could let him see, for his last days of his life. This is a patient of a PED which got fatter and flatter over 8 months. This is a follow-up of 4 Paginex injections, which I have. The longest follow-up I have of maximum injections of my patient. My first patient whom I treated, she was a 64-year-old lady of an occult large PED. She had received 24 ranibizumabs, 5 aflibercepts, and we moved on to brolucizumab in 30th October, the first patient. Second injection she received a month later. Why, I will tell you. I was not planning to give a loading dose. And the third was after 2.5 months. And the fourth was after 4 months because of the second wave, which she prevented her from coming in. So this is how the story starts in 2018. You can see this serous PED here, which is visible. We injected her post-eccentrics. She flattened very well with 2 injections. It came back with a vengeance. You can see that there is, horizontal extension. There is a lot of hyperreflective foci which show activity of this lesion. So the PED gets broadened here. There's intraretinal fluid here, as you can see, with HRFs here. So this is when we gave the first brolucizumab, and you can see this is a very wide PED, looking like IPCV with all features. This is on day 1, the first time I saw the RPE coming so close, and this becoming like a cleft here. This is day 1, because I was very scared of the inflammation. This was my first patient I was learning. This is 1 week post injection. She was looking very good, but she comes back very unhappy at day 15, So I was worried that maybe she's got some, reaction to the drug, but there was absolutely no inflammation, no vitreous cells, nothing. But the PED had gone up and the HRFs, as you can see, had moved here, because of the sudden flattening which we got after the first injection. So PEDs are very difficult to treat, and I think Praginex makes our job very easy in these patients, as I will show you in this case. So this is then we gave the second injection at first month because of the rebound which we had in the PED. And this is again day 3. The vision improved to 618 from 660 when she started with. This was the best improvement we had throughout all the other injections also. Then day 10, again, we had a 100 micron reduction and the vision was 618. This is the closest it comes to the this choroid here, the PED here, as you can see. At 5 weeks, she looked very good. So I said, oh, wow, let's get little greedy and delay further, So I think 3 months is the cutoff where a PED can, live with Paginex. Then it came back again with a vengeance. So I've come to my sweet spot that, maybe 2 monthly injections for a patient with occult CNVM is very important because these are very difficult nuts to crack. So we gave the injection here again. You can see the third injection was given. And again, we got a good response. She comes back at 4 months, with all this COVID business. And you can see that she's much, much better. There's a serosanguinous PED here, and we gave the 4th Paginex here. And here again, we got a very good response. Again, you can see the foveal dip also coming back. So these very high PEDs above 1000 also do respond to this miraculous drug which we are seeing in our armamentarium. What about the treatment naive cases? This was a 55-year-old type A personality lady who came with metamorphopsia running into my clinic saying, that she's seeing wavy everything in life since last 1 week. And this is how she had a typical RAP lesion, type 3 CNVM with intraretinal fluid here. And this is the hemorrhage, which is seen here beautifully, intraretinal hemorrhage. And this is the express drying, which we saw in this eye. I think the lesion is intraretinal. So this drug being so small just dries it off beautifully. And look at the foveal contour coming back here, So I was wondering whether I'm just, missing out some. So this is the high definition raster scan through the lesion. And you can see, except for some HRFs, the lesion is actually dry, So now at 1 month, what do I treat? So I have followed up this patient. She's remained dry for last 3 months. And I'm not giving her any injection because I don't know what to treat, So I think this drug has maybe really worked and healed the lesion. But it's too early to say in AMD, as we all know, So this is an 80-year-old lady who I've been following up for last 20 years. She was like a very faithful patient who stayed with me for 20 years. So she had received 2 PDTs in 2003, 40 ranibizumabs PRN, 2 DEX implants. Why in AMD, you'll ask? So she presented with vision of counting fingers at 3 meters, with cystoid macular spaces, with retinal cysts, with SHREM, with all the biomarkers you want. So we gave her a last shot of brolucizumab because we said, let's try this new drug. And we had a magic improvement in vision also and in the scan also, which I will share with you all. So this is how the story starts in 2010. Fast forwarding here, this is how it happened. There was a PED with intraretinal fluid, cystic fluid, SHREM coming up with HRFs. The fluid was never really going away. So I said, oh, maybe this is like, an inflammatory element of fluid. Maybe I'm missing out something, So that's when we decided to do a Ozurdex in her case. But it didn't move a micron. And then we moved back to eccentrics. And then after the first wave of COVID, she came here to me in November 2020. with this sort of a total disarray, the whole retinal architecture. So I said, let's do a last try with this new drug. I discussed with her daughter, who is a highly educated teacher in American school. So this is how she looked pre-brolucizumab. I mean, there is no retina at all to be seen in a retinal architecture. This is on day 30th, okay? This is like, I mean, retinal regeneration is what I feel it is happening. And she never had this in her life with me, you know. This is a foveal dip with a vision improving. I mean, so I just said, I thought, you know, there won't be any vision improvement, but she improved to 660, you know. And this is how she comes back after the second wave with a recurrence here, but this is looking a much better retina, you know, in spite of 6 months later, she was, you know, and the vision is still 660 partial. That's when we have given her a second dose and we are looking out for a further improvement. So I think I'll stop at this, I think, you know, rather than burden with too many cases. And thank you very much for your patient indulgence. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dudani, for this excellent presentation. And I like your terms like express drying and mysterious non-resolving fluid.
Thanks.
This terminology is only you can coin. But only thing you see, I wanted to ask you before I move to Dr. Indu is about your guts to inject 6x6 incidental discovery of CNVM in the right eye of that pharmacist's father.
Yeah. So, you know, what happened? So she was a pharmacist's daughter. She was very aware of this drug, you know. So most of my patients, fortunately or unfortunately, are very well educated, you know. So I, you know, discuss even the side effects of them. So I you know, I told her, so you're worried about inflammation. So she said, no, I'm worried about vascular occlusion. So she was so aware of everything, you know. And luckily she was one of my, you know, 10th cases, which I did. So I had developed a little confidence on this drug. So I could suggest to her, you know.
So we'll have a lot of discussion in the last 10 minutes or so. Let's hear from Indu, what is her experience, real world experience of this novel drug.
Thank you.
See, the entire country is sometimes so hesitant to use this drug, but listening to Ajay, listening to Srinivas, and listening to Babulal, Disha experience, it is making everybody confident that we should go ahead and try. Because I've yet to come across anybody actually telling me that he has experienced vasculitis or inflammation. Because what I have done in initial 18 patient now is that I take photograph of day 1, day 7 and day 30 just to see, just to tell and convince that there is no media haze at all after this drug. Yes, Indu, carry on please.
Yes, thank you so much and hi everyone. So let me now share my experience with Peginix. As everyone knows that, you know, I've been treating most of my patients with complications like PCVs with Visudyne since last 20 years. And I've become so much confident with Visudyne and PDT and doing combined therapy that I did not think about using Peginix in most of these patients. Still, the Visudyne was not available. And that started in February, early February 2021. And then I had no option but to, you know, view another molecule because I've tried all other ones and I realized that they do not act as well as, you know, what I'm used to. So let me start my presentation with a patient who was 56-year-old. And she started coming to me in 2016. And this is how she presented and, you know, huge PEDs. And I was doing combined therapy at that time. And these are the kind of results that I was getting and the improvement in vision. And after 1 year, she again developed the same kind of thing. Again, I did the combined PDT and, you know, very good results. Now, this is before, you know, again, after 1 year and after PDT, again, it subsided. Fourth time she developed the same kind. Again, I did PDT. Now, this is after PDT in 2018. And even after 4 combined therapies, I could still have vision, which was as good as 6x6. And, you know, the patient was doing very well and very happy. And then she started coming and there was, if you can see here, there was some membrane developing in this area. And, but now, I did not have PDT because Visudyne wasn't available. And this is the time I gave her injection of Avastin. She didn't do well at all. The membrane was still increasing. If you see here and here, gave another injection of Avastin, the membrane is now becoming stronger. And that is when I said, no, I have to try this new molecule. And this is when, this is again after third Avastin. And now the membrane has become stronger and things are becoming slightly bad here. And this is before Peginex. And this was the patient where I got so enamored by this drug, and I noticed in all my patients, I've done about 37th injection I gave today, because I started quite late. I was scared of the vascular and the inflammation and all those reports. I kept talking to the company, but I did not have a heart to start using this drug. But in early February, I did actually. So even the the membranes, it has a lot of effect on the membranes. So let me go over to more, more patients. This is 75-year-old male, where this is before Peginex. And if you see here in OCT angios, there are so many of these, PEDs. And this is after one injection, the vision is become better and the patient is looking much better. And this is an old scarred kind of lesion. This is another patient, lots of PEDs here. It's so important to look at all these OCT angio pictures to really know what this drug is doing all over the place, not just the central macula, drying up, but to all other PEDs and a lot of things, which we could not even cover with our PDTs. So the things have become so much better here, and this is after Peginex, and the patient is looking much better. Now, this is another 80-year-old female where there was a huge PED, and if you look here at lot of polyps here. But after one injection of Peginex, the macula is becoming better. There are some exudates, but it's much better. And the PEDs become smaller now. And look at these polyps. The polyps have just disappeared. The whole area was full of polyps, and now they are just in this area. This is another patient. There is a Shrem here and PD, and this is how the OCT angio was looking. And just after one Peginex, this is looking much better. After second Peginex, the things are even better, but the PED is yet to resolve in this. Now, the same patient, this is pre-treatment. This is after first Peginex, and this is after second Peginex. And this patient got the third Peginex yesterday. So I'm yet to see the result, because this PD as yet has not resolved. So another patient, 42-year-old female CNVM, 624, vision. And then I became more confident. Now, this is a simple CNVM where perhaps eccentrics also would have worked. But, having been confident, I've started giving this option to all my patients. And this is how the patient looks after Peginex, pre-Peginex, and this is post-Peginex. The patient is much better. Another 65-year-old male. Now, this is a patient where I had done PDT. These are the polyps you can see here, the polyps. And in PDTs, I was just looking at the polyps and just treating the polyps. And this is how the patient was after treatment with PDT. The patient just kept coming, and I kept giving the eccentrics. And this is after treatment with the third eccentrics, till the patient was developing PED again. And this is before treatment with Peginex and after treatment with Peginex, where the things are looking much better. Another 57-year-old female. Now, this is a high myopia patient. And again, this is, because we are becoming very confident with this. So this is one option that I'm giving to all my patients now. And the thing has really improved with this. Another 62-year-old. If you see here, and this is after Peginex, one injection, the patient has already got the second injection Peginex in this. And 40-year-old male, I'm going very fast because I just have about few seconds left. This is after first Peginex, and things are looking much better after the second Peginex. another 74-year-old male. Now, this patient had come from far, so I just told them to send me the OCT. So the OCT was done somewhere else, and the patient has really improved, and the patient is very happy, of course. This was the original lesion, and after Peginex, the patient is really. This is another lady who's had in the left eye a very scarred retina, and she's a gynecologist. And this is how she looks just after one Peginex, a bad retina, but it's really, really improved. And she has lots of drusen maculopathy and dry maculopathy. Just my last slide. This is a patient who's had lots of eccentrics, injections, and some PDTs. But as I noticed, there were some membranes developing somewhere, at different places, which are still very active. With Peginex, the central vision has remained the same, but these membranes just disappear on OCT angio. So the results of my last 30 patients have increased my confidence. And now I've just started using it in even diabetic patients also. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Indu, for showing wonderful pictures. And very happy to see that a lot of your patients are improving on Peginex. And are you still waiting for PDT to come back, or you have sufficient confidence?
No, I have sufficient confidence now.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. The reason I was asking was because Visudyne, I don't know when it will become available. But as of now, in all these patients with IPCV, we have to depend on monotherapy with this.
Absolutely. No, but this drug is really doing very well. I'm very confident now.
So has it become number one drug for you, or are you still using resistant patients?
This has become number one, although I'm slightly skeptical about the inflammation part. I haven't had inflammation as yet in my patients, but I'm slightly skeptical. So in BRVOs, I'm using it with caution. Not many patients, but in diabetics and AMD, yes. In AMD, it's become my number one drug. Yes.
Diabetics, so I haven't used it actually. Prashant, what is your take on this? AMD
Sir, this is off-label. Basically, the
your audio is breaking up, Prashant.
Is not get approved, but yes, few of the patient, like any other anti-VEGF, I have been using it. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah,
Hello?
now better.
Hello. Yeah.
Carry on.
Yes, sir. I accept FDA has not yet approved this particular drug for indications beyond AMD, but I have experience with CRVO-related macular edema, diabetic macular edema, and predominantly they are the patients of doctors' parents, parents or something like that, who can understand the ifs and buts about using it off-label.
Ramesh,
and they do well. They do well, of course.
Ramesh?
Yes.
Ramesh
Yes, sir. I have used it. I've used it in a lot of cases other than AMD as well. I've used it in my big CNEs, DMD, BRVOs, RVOs, and the response has been good. Actually, it means really it has been really nice. The response has been really good. I just have one more point. Probably we are all looking at PED responding very well to the drug.
Partho, you are muted. Prashant? Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Let's come back to real world experience from further south, Manoj Khatri, a prolific VR surgeon from south and a lot of experience in Peginex.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you, Lalit sir. Thank you, AIS, for the kind invitation. Are my slides visible?
Yeah. Please carry on.
Yeah. So just in a couple of minutes ahead, I'd like to share.
Yeah, try to be as brief as possible because we have to have some discussion.
Yes, sir. I am very fast now. Brolucizumab with management of neovascular AMD. What is our real world experience? Straight away, starting with the cases, 55-year-old female presented to us with CNVM with a typical notch PD here. And I don't have to stress that younger patients, female gender and notch PDs, we need to think about PCV. That's what we thought. Treatment naive-wise, and straight away started with brolucizumab as a treatment naive patient, because already we had experience in treating recalcitrant cases. And what you give, because initially we were following up these patients in view of IOI, that is intraocular inflammation, every 2 weeks. So this is what a typical response we achieve in 2 weeks time. Over a period of time, this patient did very well and has 6/6 vision now with 2 injections of brolucizumab. Another patient, this was from a charitable wing, already had penetrating keratoplasty and retinal surgeries by myself. So the PK was not done by me. The retina surgery was done by me. So was doing quite well with attached retina, but developed an occult CNVM. Wanted to minimize the intervention, so gave him brolucizumab, and this is what we achieved in 2 weeks time. A very favorable outcome, and with another second injection, this patient again did very well with near resolution of choroidal neovascular membrane. But what happened with patient who already had treatment with other anti-VEGF agents has been shown by previous speakers as well. So this another patient of mine, 82-year-old female, had a neovascular AMD, treated by me with aflibercept in 2018 and 2019. I'm not saying aflibercept is an inferior molecule, but there was a very good favorable response, but she lost to follow-up due to COVID-19. And this is what a vengeance type looking recurrence of CNVM when she presented to us with SHRM and all. I was having my own doubts about how to, go ahead with the treatment, but by October we started using brolucizumab. So this was in November. I offered her brolucizumab. She agreed, and this is what we get in a 2 weeks time. A dramatic response. What you can see here, a recurrent CNVM with so much of fluid, SHRM sitting there. But over a period of 2 weeks, you get, almost drying up of entire fluid, and the CNVM is getting better, and the SHRM is also reducing in size. So this was a very good indication. Kept this patient on same brolucizumab treatment over a period of time, and now after 3 loading doses and 1 more injection or post-loading dose, there is a near total resolution with a visual acuity of 6/12 for this patient. So this gave us a lot of encouraging results over a period of time. This is what after 2 weeks, what you see here. Very good anatomical and structure and a functional outcome for this particular patient, and you get more and more confidence in using this molecule. Another patient, again 76-year-old female, treated elsewhere in the past with 4 injections. I'm not saying the treatment done elsewhere was inferior, but when she came to us with looking at so much of chronicity in the outer retinal layers, along with fluid at every level, I thought rather than giving, ranibizumab and aflibercept, straight away shift this patient to brolucizumab. And this is what we get with single injection of brolucizumab, very good favorable outcome. The wow factor comes with the treatment, after the treatment, when the retinal architecture starts becoming normal or near normal, and dries up, the fluid dries up quite quickly. So this gives you enough confidence that, the drug is better, doing quite well. And the patient experiences the wow effect quite immediately. So over a period of time, this patient also did quite well. Another patient, again treated by me with aflibercept in 2019 with 4 injections. He was doing quite well. It's not that he was not responding to treatment, but when lost to COVID follow-up, he came with this kind of a recurrence of CNVM, quite a complex and challenging one. I was thinking of even IPCV component in this patient. We did ICG, but ICG didn't rule out anything. It was just an occult CNVM. So kept this patient on brolucizumab over a period of time, again with 3 loading doses, followed by 1 PRN protocol. And this patient, what you see here, immediately after 2 weeks, this is just pre-treatment and post-treatment, immediately 2 weeks later, very good anatomical and functional outcome. Over a period of time, this patient also did quite well. Another case treated by me with for a notch PED, thinking of IPCV, but more like just like a serous sanguineous PED by aflibercept, followed by brolucizumab. So this was in September when the patient came. Kept this patient on aflibercept. Not much of change in PED height and the width was noted, but this was the time when I said, okay, let me try with 1 more aflibercept. Did the same. The fluid started appearing on the subretinal space. So this was the time I thought, let me shift over to brolucizumab, and we did the same. And with 1 single injection from this, visit, to this visit in 2 weeks' time, one single injection, we got a very good flattening of the PET. It doesn't mean tells that the aflibercept is an inferior molecule. It was also showing response to the treatment, but brolucizumab effects, is a better option and can be considered in these patients. Even you have a 10 PED. Over a period of time, this patient did quite well and had a very good, anatomical and functional outcome. Couple of last cases, this patient had occult CNVM treatment, nave eye. Again, what you see here is occult component of a CNVM. Other eye also had a similar picture. We injected bilateral brolucizumab in this patient and did very well, even with a couple of injections. That's what you can see here. After 1 month with single injection, there was near total resolution of choroidal neovascular membrane complex. Another patient who had a bilateral treatment in the past by myself with occult CNVM, presented with such kind of a huge pocket of subretinal fluid. I was even thinking of a rheumatogenic retinal detachment in this patient, but it just the examination revealed only occult CNVM. Over a period of time, this kind of a SHRM also resolved quite well with brolucizumab monotherapy treatment. What you see here in 2 weeks' time, with single injection, we had a very good outcome, favorable outcome. The entire subretinal fluid which was present and going up to the equator has resolved quite well with single injection. And over a period of time, this patient had very good anatomical and functional outcome. So does we have to say that brolucizumab is the molecule? Definitely yes, it's one of the better molecules available and we are moving ahead in the right direction. However, case selection remains a key criteria here, and learning from each other's experiences, what we are doing for last 6 months is also one of the thing which we have to keep doing on and off. We need to read the fine print quite effectively and also try to collaborate Indian data so that we have our own series of experience and we can publish that as well. So as we know, there is a very promising molecule, gives us a very good response on anatomical as well as the functional outcome. And over a period of time, the number of injections will reduce, which is very good for our patients. Thank you very much for a patient hearing.
Thank you, Manoj. Wonderful presentation on your patients. And what I see is that everybody till now have presented, very good results. Prashant, why is it that there is still scare amongst even? Can you stop sharing? Yeah. So why is it, Prashant or Ramesh or anybody can contribute? Why is it that there is scare even amongst retinologists today?
Sir, the thing is, I believe the scare was predominantly created by the Novartis group itself. If you look at the incidence of inflammation in the older thing, out of 72,000 injections, I believe they have had inflammations in 28 or 30. If you look at any Indian biosimilar or there are more cases than what this whole study of 72,000 patients, experience of 72,000 patients have contributed. Now look at Indian experience as well. We have more than 10 to 12,000 cases in our country. Only one case in Hyderabad, which was reported and being discussed, and one case of minimal inflammation by Dr. Ashish Vaidya. Yeah, and that turned out to be not exactly 24 hours later does not mean it is a inflammatory response. It must be infective, whatever be. So, and still that eye survived and is doing well. So I feel it is a overemphasized or overblown fear which has been induced in our mind. And regarding the Merlin study, what I feel is it is unnecessary. The patient, they went for a overkill and going for a monthly injections, and that is where it backfired.
Yeah. So let's hear Milan, your experience, real world experience. Try to show a couple of cases so that then we come back for a very healthy discussion amongst all the panelists. So try to be as brief as possible.
We can't hear anything.
You have to unmute yourself, sir.
Can you unmute here? Milan? You have to unmute. Unmute. We can't hear. Hello, Milan.
Yeah, I could not unmute it.
Yeah. Please start with case 1.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes. Now it is clear.
It is a 66-year-old male, known case of wet RMD, already on injection eccentric and 2 injection taken, but due to lockdown last year, he could not present for the loading dose 3rd injection and presented directly after 8 months with, my slides are not changing. Yeah. So he presented with recurrence of CNVM, type 2 CNVM classic with a lot of intraretinal fluid. And at this time, we offered this new molecule to the patient. And immediately after 1 week, the fluid dries up and visual acuity also started improving, which was remained dried at 8 weeks. And on OCTA, it was showing nice choroidal vascular network, which started regressing itself at the end of 1 week and further regressed at 8 weeks. And at the end of 12 week of first injection, on clinically looks more drier and regressed membrane, but on OCT showed recurrence of intraretinal fluid. And OCTA is also showing reactivation of this membrane. This is the serial images of OCTA showing reappearance of this membrane at the end of 12 week, and second injection was given. And after 4 weeks of second injection, again that dried up, and this membrane on OCTA also showing regression. Now case 2 is again other eye of previous case only. He started with bilateral wet RMD with similar history, and there was a recurrence of this type 2 classic choroidal membrane after 8 months. And in this eye also, after brolucizumab, the intraretinal fluid and membrane started regressing immediately after 1 week, which was still dry at the end of 8 weeks. And the OCTA is showing the regression of this membrane nicely, and at the end of 8 weeks, almost disappearance of this membrane on OCTA. But with similar history at 12 weeks, the reappearance of SRF and reappearance of this membrane on OCTA. And second injection was given at the end of 12 weeks. And again, after 4 weeks of second injection, this membrane again disappeared on OCTA, and patient is under follow-up. My case 3 is a male 35-year-old presented with metamorphosia since last 4 months, and to have history of CSR, and he was on some eye drops treatment elsewhere. Fundus photo showed RP mottling and resolved CSR like picture, but on OCTA it showed choroidal neovascular membrane. So the diagnosis was made of chronic CSR with CNVM, and at that time injection eccentrics was given, and at the end of 4 weeks the PD had regressed, fluid also disappeared. Symptomatically patient was better, but this membrane was lying as it is on OCTA. We asked patient to complete the loading dose of eccentrics, but at that time patient refused for the treatment, and then he came back after 2 months with further increase in his symptoms, and at this time we injected brolucizumab. And the more interesting one is the PD got flat, and this choroidal neovascular membrane disappeared on OCTA, and which was maintained even at the end of 6 weeks, and he is maintaining 6/6 vision. My case 4 is a female 80-year, known case of wet RMD, one-eyed, other eye lost with disciform scar. Already patient had taken eccentrics and aflibercept, and presented with large fibrovascular PVD with lot of intraretinal, subretinal, and sub-RP fluid. And after the 1 week of brolucizumab, the whole fluid disappeared, but the height of PD increased. And I was a bit worried about having a RP rip in the follow-up. But to my surprise, at the end of 4 weeks, this PD got flattened, and patient's visual acuity improved from 618 to 612, one line. And serial follow-up is showing at 8 week, at 12 week, flat PD, no intraretinal fluid. but reappearance of fluid at the end of 16 week, and second injection of Peginex was given at the end of 16 week. And again, 4-week follow-up, it's flat and dry at 8 week. Again, at 16 week, the recurrence of fluid and second injection of brolucizumab was given at the end of 16 week. Now, next case, male 74-year-old presented with just metamorphosia since 1 month with visual acuity of 612, treatment naive patient, and color fundus photographs showed a lot of exudation and subretinal hemorrhage inferior to macula. OCT is showed multiple PED with SRF, but fovea is relatively dry. That's why he was maintaining good vision. But at the end of 1 week, the fluid disappeared, but the height of PED increased. And at the end of 6 weeks, this PED height got flattened, all fluid disappeared, patient's vision improved to 6/6 part. And on follow-up, that maintained at dried at 10 weeks. But on OCTA, at presentation showed a lot of noise and some vascular activity on octa, and some vascular loop-like thing was observed. And at the end of 10 weeks, the octa showed more homogeneous and silent appearance with this loop got regressed on octa. But at the end of 14 weeks, the PED had started coming back, and second injection was given at the end of 14 weeks. And at the end of 8 weeks of second injection, the PED is maintained at the same level. Visual acuity is also maintained at same level. And this vascular loop, which was present, has again regressed at the end of 8 weeks. Now, I have a follow-up of second week, 16 week second injection, and as well as just 3-4 days back, we completed 20-week follow-up of second injection, and still he is dry and a little bit PED, but no symptoms and visual acuity maintained. So it started with this PED. And I'll just skip my last case. Again, PCV case. So probably I was first to use this molecule in India after its commercial launch, and up till now I have used 60 patients, and no intraocular inflammation was observed.
So thank you, Dr. Milan, for your. I know that you started using this first of all, and what is people had told me. So let's have some discussion, because you see, what I have gathered from these 7-8 speakers is that all of you from pan India, north, west, east, south. Fortunately, I was just seeing people from north, west. Everybody has shown good experience. So today, how confident are you, Prashant or Devulal or Hindu, of recommending this or using it in your own eye, your relative's eye? Because that gives the real confidence. Srinivas has come back.
For me, sir.
How confident you are, Ramesh? Let me ask Ramesh, because.
Yeah, Ramesh, sir.
Yeah, so sir, I have used and I'm quite confident.
Brief in reply, because how confident you are? Are you confident?
Yes, I am confident.
100%. Anybody who is having double, thoughts that he may give Eccentrics first and then Eylea and then fall back upon this magic bullet.
No, we are very confident, very confident now.
No, my concern is because even at my institution, people are still afraid. People are still afraid to, give. And this, fuel was added to the fire by this Merlin study a couple of weeks back. And when I went into depth of Merlin study and Hawk and Harrier, which Nishikant presented very nicely, there's a difference in the protocol. And as I gathered from all of you, nobody, in fact, very few will be giving loading dose and keep giving every 4 weeks. And that is when you land.
Right.
If you give every 4 weeks this very potent molecule, and Nishikant said it is very fast, longer duration, potent, molar dosing, all those advantages. So there's no need to give this potent molecule every 4 weeks. Are we all in agreement, or anybody differs on this?
Exactly.
So probably
I agree with you.
Another probability is that we are not giving loading dose. So suppose more and more often, if you start giving loading dose, probably you may have findings which will be similar to a Merlin study. Yeah. So right now we are not giving the loading dose protocol.
So are you
But
worried
I
about
think
side effects?
people are always scared.
I
Yeah, yeah.
have
Are you
been
worried?
giving the
That's what I'm
loading dose in my cases, fortunately not.
So
And
are you worried about side effects?
hello.
Have anybody seen side effects with the brolucizumab?
No, not
No,
yet.
as of now, nothing.
We have used a lot of
So
cases, sir.
I have
I
also
can
not seen any media haze. I have not seen vasculitis. Although, honestly speaking, compared to Eccentrix or Eylea, I follow this patient more closely because I don't want to miss and somebody else catches his side effects. So as of now, still I watch these patients more frequently, and till date I haven't seen any patient of either IOI, that is intraocular inflammation, or vasculitis or occlusion. So
What would be your protocol for follow-up, sir?
I normally, you see, now I have become slightly liberal, but initial 5 or 6 injections I saw first day, first week, and first month. That was just because I was worried about that no patient should go in the open market. Just hold on, please, we'll just wind up. We all know it has a more drying effect, there's no doubt about it. You see, in
Yes.
all my patients, not even single patient I saw visual acuity improvement is a different ball game. You see, vision is by and large stable or marginally improved, but drying effect is marked all across, and all fluids, whether it is IRF, SRF, or sub-RT fluid, all of them get dried up. I would like to have comments from Prashant, Milan.
For me, sir, the basic selling point is the efficacy, and the second most thing is economics. If you
Yeah.
look at the economics, the direct and the indirect cost, it turns out to be cheaper than using an Avastin in a tier 2, tier 3 cities like me. So tier 2 cities, it goes to
Yeah.
around 30,000 for 3 Avastin monthly, while this goes as a single injection around 30,000. So patients are very happy when the direct cost is equivalent to 3 Avastin injections of loading dose.
I would request you to come out with one slide regarding economics of anti-VEGF injections. You see, I used to give this lecture a long time back when we compared all the anti-VEGFs. So this is a very useful point, Prashant, you have said.
Sir, one point I'd like to raise is that the patients are more willing to come for the checkups rather than the injection visits. Because
Yeah.
for injection visits, they have to obviously go to the OR and have their family and others, especially the DME people we've injected with brolucizumab. So these are probably the best of the lot, enjoying without coming, with their attendants. So that's also a point that helps out.
I agree. Indu and Srinivas, how do you tackle, you see, peers? Because a lot of these patients come, Dr. Saab, उन्होंने तो बोला है ये injection नहीं लगाना है. You see, that is what I am facing. They say it is not safe. You see, how do you tackle, or do you take special consent for these patients?
Of course, sir. Consent is one thing is definitely there, sir. But second thing, what I assure that patient is, if my relative was sitting
Why
there,
is this echoing, Srinivas? You have done something.
sir, is it clear now?
No.
Srinivas, you have two
No.
devices.
Meanwhile, maybe Indu can tell this.
Sir, is it better
Yeah.
now?
Indu?
Hanji,
I'm really sorry, but we will have to
there
wind
are
up.
not many patients.
1 minute, Nikhil, 1 minute. Give me 1 minute here.
Sir, already the other sessions are here. We
Yeah, I
have
know,
to
I
get
know.
them in.
I
We are
know, I know.
already ahead of time.
Nikhil, 1 minute. Nikhil, 1 minute.
So
Hold back.
I don't
minute,
think
Abhi Rai.
Sorry,
there are
Lalit, sir,
many
continue.
patients.
Yeah.
There are many patients who really, say that it has complications or it has problems, and not many patients ask they said whatever you want to do, it's okay. So I'm not facing any such problem that the patients they say that there is a problem.
In this era of Google, a lot of patients come. So I definitely take a special consent that there is a risk, but believe me, I show them a lot of examples. So I'll conclude this session with thanks to all the speakers and with one request to all of you that let's all get together, collate the data on a single platform so that you can become confident, and let others also become confident of using this wonderful molecule with a lot of drying effect. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.